Russ Harriman is going back to a place he remembers, a time he can never forget, and to people he once knew. "50 years ago, young Russ Harriman was a flight engineer on a B24 Liberator bomber. He was in the 453rd Bomb Group, one of 14 bomb groups of the 2nd Air Division, 8th United States Army Air Force. From their bases in East Anglia, England, they flew daylight raids over Europe, striking at the powerful Nazi war machine and its means of war: refineries, bridges, airfields, transportation systems, subpens, factories. From 1942 through 1945, they flew in the face of deadly anti-aircraft fire and into the airspace of waiting German fighters. Nearly 7,000 2nd Air Division airmen gave their lives to win victory in Europe. Russ Harriman, the war is over. Russ Harriman and the 2nd Air Division have come back to the familiar streets of Norwich.
How are you? How are you? So nice to see you back in England again.
Jeff Gregory begins the week-long celebration of the 50th anniversary of victory in Europe.
Bless your heart.
Not far from the ashes of a devastating fire that destroyed their precious memorial room in the Norwich Central Library, the 2nd Air Division comes to dedicate a temporary memorial room.
Tremendous progress, and the staff have been magnificent, and it's in business. I mean, once we've done this rededication this morning, we'll open the doors again, it'll be crowded with the public. It really is a very busy library.
News of the fire spread rapidly throughout England and the United States.
Fire broke out early this morning at the Norwich Central Library as cleaners set to work. One of them reported hearing a loud bang and flames quickly spread throughout the building, but no one was injured. Hundreds of thousands of books and many valuable records were completely wiped out. This includes the American Air Division Memorial Library, a unique record of the activities of US servicemen who were stationed in Norfolk during the Second World War.
It is where the fire is believed to have started. What Bud Corndike and Richard Kennedy saw was the charred remains of their memorial library. It was in memory of the 6,700 airmen who gave their lives in World War II. But from this disaster, there promises to rise from the ashes another living memorial to all those men.
I guess what we have to do now is look to the future and determine to rebuild this magnificent memorial. As we all know, it's one of a kind, and we certainly don't want to lose it.
I flew 30 missions over here during World War II as a pilot, and when we got on that last mission, we came back, we kissed the ground. In some cases, we were tossed into a water trough to celebrate that. That was our last mission. But at our age, we have one last mission.
The idea for the 2nd Air Division Memorial Room was born before the end of the war. In the spring of 1945, an appeal for funds was made to the 2nd Air Division by the division commanding general, Major General William E. KEPNER.
A number of men in the division have for some time thought it appropriate for us to create in this area a memorial to these gallant comrades as a shrine to which their families and loved ones, and indeed many of us, may return in years to come. In order to fashion a memorial worthy of these high purposes, architects have estimated that approximately £20,000 will be needed as our share of the cost, and this sum must be raised from the men of the 2nd Division.
The £20,000 raised by the 2nd Air Division was presented to the Lord Mayor of Norwich to establish a trust fund for the memorial.
The combined efforts and sacrifices of our two nations and their allies have overthrown the Nazi menace to the ideals of free people, that they may endure forever. I speak for all the men in my command when I say that the memorial to be constructed with these funds will be to them, and they hope to their many friends in this part of England, a symbol of those ideals: life, liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness.
The 2nd Air Division Memorial Room was completed and dedicated in 1963. It soon became a place where both English and Americans could go to learn about the war and remember those who sacrificed their lives for freedom.
I think it's the greatest ties that two countries can have, to have this sort of a joint library, and for the future of the children from not only these two countries, but all the other countries in the world, really.
How does that make you feel, coming back and being with your dad and seeing all these things?
Kind of proud of him. Definitely. Very proud.
Today, the 2nd Air Division and their English friends vow to rebuild the memorial room better than ever.
This memorial shrine grew out of the wish of your people to remember and rebuild. Out of the ashes and devastation of the Second World War grew this reminder of suffering and loss, but also a sign of hope for the future. Now once more it has risen from the fire and ashes of last August.
In the afternoon, American airmen of today escort American airmen of yesterday to a ceremony honoring those who died in the war.
Here we are at Maddingly, and all it stands for, remembering not only our 6,700 guys, but all the others who gave their lives. Bless them all. I don't think they'll ever be forgotten.
Not everyone.
At least we won't let them be forgotten as long as we live.
And it's a great opportunity to honor these great men. I hope I never have to do that, what they've gone through.
Welcome to the Cambridge American Military Cemetery on this historic occasion. Today we have come to remember one of the most momentous days in human history, VE Day, Victory in Europe. Such a moment fills every free man and woman with pride when the glory of that time is recalled.
So gallant, we strain.
Leaders of America and Great Britain pay tribute to Americans who fought and fell.
In our nation's hour of need, these fine men came to our rescue, and we owe them our freedom from tyranny today.
And we do so on the rock-solid foundation of what you veterans accomplished here in Europe 50 years ago. We will be worthy of your sacrifices, and the scars you bear and the deaths of your buddies were not in vain. We will not forget you, and we will not fail you. You have given Europe 50 springtimes in peace. And as the 11th Supreme Allied Commander Europe, let me simply say, the mission continues.
Vice President Al Gore came from the United States to celebrate Victory in Europe Day with the 8th Air Force veterans.
They laughed. They were hurt and they cried. They were loved. Fathers and mothers, wives and children loved them, and they loved in return. They knew the heat of summer, the cold of winter, the softness of rain, the brightness of snow. Before they were names on these stones, they were names in a neighborhood or a school. And to call their name was to summon up their faces, their voices, their place in the world. These dead here at Maddingly flew in B-17 Flying Fortresses, in B24 Liberators, and P-51 Mustangs. They were the bombardiers, the pilots, the navigators, who chanced life and death in black bursts of flak. They were the brave and gallant mechanics, the ground crews and air crews, the medics and nurses, the clerks and drivers and radio operators who were victory's unsung authors. Had they lived, some would be among you today, gathered here with us to honor the living and the dead. The bodies of these men and women rest in the bosom of the earth, their souls in keeping with God. But their spirits are with us to the ending of the world, and what they did for us can never die.
The men and women who gave their lives are remembered by the laying of memorial wreaths. They are honored by a Royal Air Force honor flight. The bagpipes play a traditional British lament symbolizing a soldier's last posting. A 21-gun salute. Afterwards, Vice President Gore makes his way to meet 2nd Air Division veterans and their families at a special reception.
Colonel Baker, Red Army retired.
Thank you. How are you?
Hello. This is Vice President.
Nice to see you.
Welcome to Cambridge.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed the speech very much. I'm a native of North Carolina.
Sure.
I'm his daughter. Very well. Now we know what these movie stars go like.
Remembering the great sacrifice that was made, and then also knowing exactly what is required to prevent those sacrifices in the future.
Our numbers and our ranks are being depleted. It's ending up without, and in a few years we'll all be gone.
We were able to think of those that were really during those silent moments and the prayers. We were able to visualize our relatives that were lost during World War II.
It affected me, emotionally, it was very touching. Because I've been here before and I've been through the process of looking at the graves, and it's a tearful situation for us all the time. I could be there by the grace of God, I'm not.
I thought it was most moving, quite a tribute to all the veterans.
And I had the pleasure of placing the wreath for the 3D 9th Bomb Group, which was very exciting.
Why did you come? Why did you come all the way to England this time? Why did you have to come here?
Well, this is important to me to represent our group, and also the fact that I was over here in 1945 when the war ended, and to come back 50 years later is quite an exciting thing.
The legacy of the airmen of yesterday is passed on to the airmen of today.
It's a great sense of heritage as much as anything else of those who have gone before. I try not to, you honor those who went before, but you try to also extend that into the future. That's what I tell our airmen when they come to these. Is to think about what they did, but think about what it means to us in the future. That's pretty important to us.
It was great. I really enjoyed it. I just hope I took care of everybody as good as I could have.
Ready?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh,
yeah. Pardon?
Same jacket as
The Hotel Nelson, the morning of the parade. Will Lundy wore his uniform to lead the 2nd Air Division through the streets of Norwich.
I got to carry that one. I'm just holding this one. I get to carry the American, and we got another man to find to carry this one. Very good.
You're not carrying that one.
No, Will Lundy's carrying this one. I'm just tending it for the time being. Proud to do it. Yeah.
You get the 8 there.
That's right, that's right.
Were you on the parade last time?
No, I was not. I was too young to be in the parade now.
He's your father, right?
Yeah. No, he's my younger brother. Yeah. He just lived a hard life.
It's a unique, once-in-a-lifetime experience to have participated twice in a victory parade. The same parade. No, I don't recognize anyone, but still, the idea is, this is a meeting of old friends, so you feel as if you know him.
Wait, I gotta take one for a minute.
And if you meet him once, you do know him.
Are you excited to see your granddad in the marching?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah? You ever thought you'd be over here watching him?
I don't know. It's really cool being over here in England. It's a really neat place. A lot of history.
But you're real proud of him.
Oh yeah, really proud.
And I was here in 1945, this very day, when I was 5 years old, and I saw the soldiers climbing up the lamp standards over there, turning somersaults to the top. So it's a great day, marvellous memories. A tremendous amount, and it's a very emotional time, and I give thanks for you marvellous Americans and all the Allied forces that fought as they did so that we can live today. So it means a tremendous amount, absolutely.
You be at ease for now. When the Lord Mayor arrives, you go into attention. I hope so. And at the appropriate time, at the appropriate command, the colors will be transferred down to the front of the file. And you'll be given right face, and we'll march off in 3 ranks in this direction, following the Salvation Army band.
Gotcha, sir.
Right.
Today, we join the rest of our nation to give thanks and to remember the courage of those men and women, armed and unarmed, who brought us victory in Europe 50 years ago.
Hooray! Attention!
The reviewing stand is on the steps in front of City Hall, just as it was 50 years ago. It included the Lord Mayor of Norwich, Lord Ironside, and Brigadier General Leon Johnson of the 2nd Air Division. Lord Ironside took the salute as the parade units passed in review. Today's stand includes the Lord Mayor of Norwich, Lord Ironside, son of Lord Ironside, Group Captain Nick Roosling, Station Commander at Royal Air Force Coltishall, and Colonel Albert J. Shower, Commander of the 467th Bomb Group of the 2nd Air Division.
It was held on May the 13th in 1945. As far as the components are concerned, I think this was the joy of it. The Lord Mayor of Norwich tried to recreate that parade in 1945. She invited every organisation that marched in that parade. So all the components were there. I was slightly different. I marched as a scout, and this year I marched as a Royal Air Force veteran.
As a youngster during the war, David Hastings spent all his waking hours hanging around 2nd Air Division bases near Norwich. When peace was declared, David marched proudly with his scout troop in the first Victory in Europe parade.
It was composed really of 3 major parts. As in 1945, the parade was led by servicemen of today, so we had the soldiers, sailors and airmen of today, then followed up by the veterans, so the British veterans, and then followed up by you in the 2nd Air Division. Then you had the 25th Bomb Group, which was also Americans who flew the Mosquitoes, who did all the pathfinding work. And then we had all the British civilian organisations, the nurses, the police, the fire and the scouts and the Women's Land Army. That was wonderful to see them.
Thousands from the city and countryside thronged the sidewalks and balconies lining the parade route. There was not an inch of open space in the streets. The people were ecstatic as they watched. The British Army, the Royal Air Force Band, the Royal Air Force men, the Royal Air Force women, the British Home Guard, the Sikh Indian troops, the motorcycle escort of the United States Army Air Corps, the 8th United States Air Corps Band, the 2nd Air Division with Captain Robert Lawson on the right, and the United States Women's Army Corps. The parade continues to the Norwich Cathedral, where contingents of British nurses and Royal Air Force airmen wait to enter. As school children watch, the British Army troops, the United States Color Guard, and the United States Women's Army Corps march into the 900-year-old cathedral. Together in arms, together in peace, the American and British join in giving thanks for the victory in Europe.
I think the only difference that I can remember is in 45 we marched the other way. We came up Guildhall Hill and took the salute going past the City Hall the other way.
cheering crowd lined the narrow streets all the way to the Norwich Cathedral. What was your feeling about the parade today?
Very good. First class.
What's meaningful about it to you?
Well, nothing to see such a lot of old timers in first class condition.
Where were you on Victory in Europe Day?
In Germany.
What were you doing there?
Fighting with the First Royal Norfolks.
The Allied troops entered the cathedral where the Bishop of Norwich, the Right Reverend Peter Knott, led them in a service of thanksgiving, reconciliation, and hope.
For those who endured captivity, torture, or death, that others might be free. Let us bless the Lord. Thanks be to God.
It is important to remember, because through remembering we recall those things that really matter, that guided our forefathers, that guide us in the present, and that will guide generations to come.
Let us pray with hope for the future of the world and for the needs of all people, for peace and justice in our world, for an end to war and conflict, for the leaders of all nations and peoples, and for those who make peace and foster reconciliation.
his countenance upon you and give you peace. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always.
But we're very sensitive of the fact that quite apart from the casualties from East Anglia, there were over 6,000 of your US Air Service folk who lost their lives, and the people of this county are very sensitive of that fact. So we're particularly pleased that there's such a large presence from America here today.
What does today mean to you and to both of you?
Today means a lot.
Rejoicing and remembrance.
A lot of remembrance. We lost members of our own families. I was a child here in the war, and we can remember the bombing and the feelings which were around, and very in particular, I have many memories of American friends who were stationed here in Norfolk during the war.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Is this the original jacket? No, not quite, not quite. 4 sizes large. Yeah, I was going to say, not quite that size.
This is my oldest son, my number 2 son, my grandson.
Wow.
They came 2,000 miles to watch me march, see if I could still walk.
And he did all right.
Yeah, I made it.
He marched, he did good.
You
did
a wonderful job
in
the parade. We're glad to see it. Beautiful service.
So what'd you guys think of the parade?
It was wonderful.
Impressed.
Very impressed.
Got kind of shaky, but we were impressed. We got shaky.
Yeah.
What was it like marching 50 years later?
Oh, it came back, like riding a bicycle a little bit.
I'm very proud to have been able to be involved and to greet all our American friends again. It's been a very important day for Norwich, for the city, to renew these friendships and to say thank you.
Following the cathedral service, British and Americans shared memories and friendship at a reception hosted by the Lord Mayor of Norwich in the historic St. Andrew's Hall.
Where were you 50 years ago on VE Day?
I was on my top bunk of the Quonset hut with my .45 in my hand, shooting rounds through the ceiling. And after a while that got boring, besides that the clip was empty. So I went outside, and by this time it was beginning to get evening. And I took the flare gun from the ditching dinghy that we had, on board, and I shot flares up into the sky. I really didn't care if I got caught.
So what was it like up on the reviewing stand?
Well, it was very inspiring, to see all those guys marching by, all the British and all the Americans, and I felt very honored to be there.
When the American forces walked in the parade, and as we came up, the volume of recognition and acceptance grew and grew, Yes. It reminded me of 50 years ago, this day 50 years ago. And I thought then at that time, and I feel this the same way today, that the Americans should have been applauding the British people. 6 years of their deprivation and suffering and what they went through for 6 years.
I'm proud to be here and on a day like this and to remember the past. But we still have to look to the future, and we must look forward into the future.
We went down to
Later that night, the 2nd Air Division veterans and their British friends who marched in the parade were entertained at the Norwich Theatre Royal with an evening of nostalgia.
This show will be a show of a lifetime. It's going to be a great memorabilia show, especially with the Americans being here.
But say, let's be buddies, let's play till the curtain descends. Today, who can doubt it? We all need a power that's true. Maybe it's because I belong there.
Hi there, Cole. What you say? There's going to be a certain party at the station. Satin and lace. I used to call her funny face. Choo-choo, won't you choo-choo me home?
Last moments together, a final gathering to celebrate the 50th anniversary of victory in Europe. A tradition of the 2nd Air Division, they light 8 candles, one for the memory of those who fought and fell in 7 campaigns, and one for those members of the 2nd Air Division family who follow. 8 candles for remembrance.
Raise up your glasses as we gather at last
to celebrate life, to remember the past.
50 long years since our destinies met. We are not forgotten. We shall not forget. A toast to our comrades, the fallen, whose names were almost consumed in the library flames. We offer our homage, acknowledge our debt. They are not forgotten. We shall not forget. To those who survive, let our efforts increase to further the world's new potential for peace. We served in our time without fear or regret.
We won't be forgotten. We shall not forget. We thank you for coming. We hope you have a safe journey home, that you have a great life. Be well. God bless you all.
Once again, they separate from the comrades of their youth. But goodbyes are not forever. They know they'll meet again, maybe at another reunion somewhere, or perhaps on some distant shore where the fires burn bright.